Hello everyone, it's Martha Burgess Novak. So glad to be talking with you today for Real Talk with Martha Burgess Novak, the very one. I'm glad to be talking to you today. We're going to talk about a rather important subject, but we're going to start at the very, very, very beginning. And the subject today is how to change your mind. So, all from the perspective of consciousness, of course. Let's do a prayer. We're going to launch into our subject then. Our call-in number, if you have comments or questions, is 347-850-1647. We'd love to talk with you and discuss what you think about this very important topic. Let's do a prayer. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for the opportunity to speak together, to open our minds to, by the way, pass the dog bark, to you and what you would really have us know about our lives and the lives of others in this world, and some of the things that seem random that are certainly not at all. We open ourselves, dear God, to what you would have us see, hear, sense, and know that lies in your enlightenment beyond our conscious minds right now. Speak to us, that we may live wonderful lives, adding value to this wacky world of ours. We thank you so much for this, and to that end, we now say that we know nothing, but it is the you through us and through all things that know everything. Open us to that part of us, dear God. Thank you so much for all of this. We say this prayer now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our loving guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to this show. Thank you. And so it is. Amen. So, today's topic. How to change your mind. I'm not talking about changing your mind, by the way. I have a friend who is a great returner of merchandise. I'm not talking about taking your shoes back or the clothes that you bought. I'm talking about a much more profound matter, which is changing your mind from the ego child's mind, fear-based thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that control our lives until they don't, to the love-centered behaviors that and thoughts and feelings that belong to the highest self. By the way, that terrible noise that you hear in the background, if you hear it, is something called a babble ball, which my dog has. And the moment you touch it or even walk across the floor and vibrate, that thing triggers. And I've been meaning to put it up, and I forgot to do it this morning. So what can I say? It's a life, right? You know, we've all heard the adage, if you've been in consciousness work at all, change your mind, change your life. And while the adage is true, we're going to find out that it's not as easy as the platitude suggests. We're also going to talk about what to do to change your mind so that your life indeed changes for the better. For those of you that are new to me, I'm going to explain a little principle that what I'm going to say today rides on, which is there are two minds. There is the egoic child's mind, which is the mind of a child that lives within us as adults. And there is the highest self mind, which is the whole reason you'd even listen to a show like this. Our sacred journey, our spiritual journey, is to go from one mind to the other through a triad called consciousness. And the triad is awareness leads to consciousness leads to enlightenment. That's it. So we are going from an egoic child's mind, fear-based self that sees the absence of God based on its understanding. I have a cat that's trying to walk in front of the camera. And you have a larger mind, which is a love-based mind, which is the highest mind, that certainly sees the abundance of God everywhere. So it is in our understanding of God that these two principles apply, and our lives reflect which one we're believing in the most and giving most energy to. Now, so in consciousness work, we go from one mind to the other, but generally speaking, it's quite a hard thing to do. We're going to explain why. And we'll also explain how to do it in a better way, because you must at least try to change the pattern of negative thinking, if not stop it right away. Now, you won't be able to stop it right away, but we must at least try. Now, I'd like to explain why. Because every time you use the old negative thinking and feeling patterns from the past, they become more entrenched. And entrenchment, and I want you to think of it as a habit, although it's a little more than that. Entrenchment becomes the real problem. It's not the negative thinking and feeling alone that's the problem. Entrenchment is a rut. And thinking, feeling, and living in a rut often results in depression. We can have a perfectly nice life on the surface, can't we? But inside we know we are depressed. And this is why. Entrenchment. You know, I often think of this a bit like trying to give up smoking. I have people that come to me who want to give up smoking. And giving up smoking isn't the problem. Giving up why you smoke, the reasons that you need to smoke psychologically, that's where the problem is, because you don't want to give it up. You're not going to give up a habit if you don't want to. Now, what consciousness work does is it makes you terrifically aware of what exactly you're doing. And it always begs the answer to the question, do you want to keep doing it? Is now the time not to do it anymore? Okay. So, if indeed entrenchment is a rut, and it is, how do we get out of it? Well, this is what the show is about. We're going to give you some tips like we always do at the end. I was not interested in writing the show this week about, the cute little tips to help you not think negatively about yourself, all right? I'm much more interested in giving you, I'm so sorry about the dog barking. My husband is handling the dog downstairs. I'm much more interested in your having a permanent fix than a Band-Aid. Let me explain it this way. Let's say you keep cutting your hand. I am not real interested in slipping a Band-Aid on it, because you're just going to keep cutting your hand. What I'm interested in is finding out why you're cutting your hand and stopping that. That's why I'm writing the way I'm doing today. All right, let me go back to my notes. In both minds that you are, the ego child's mind and the highest self mind, there are two programs running all the time. One is conscious. This is the part of you that decides where you want to go, what you want to do, the books you want to read, the friends you want to see, what shows to watch on television. Okay. This is the part of you that reads self-help books and goes, oh, that sounds like a good idea. But there's a subconscious mind as well. And this mind was programmed even in the in utero experience. Now, this is a hard thing for most people to realize. Very intelligent people don't even realize this. Programmed in utero beyond language. How in the world does that happen? Well, we have to... The dog. I love that dog, but we've got to transcend the barking. Hopefully, it'll stop in a few minutes. It usually does. All right. The dog is being let outside to chase all the squirrels. All right. Let's talk about how these issues were formed. Your mother, of which you were a part, of course, in the in utero experience, has various mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual experiences. Various chemicals created by her response, emotional response to these experiences, surge through her body and through yours. You do not have a language for this. That is true. And because you don't, and because you don't understand this, because you are just a little receiving blob of matter at this point, these feelings, which are chemically engendered, are remembered, that they are marked by you, if you will, that they may be understood later in your development. You understand that? So your mother feels something, chemicals are introduced into you, you don't understand them, you hold them over here until you can understand them. Now, to survive, kids have to make sense of their world. And so we have to give understanding to these things we felt in utero that came through the mother. I'm going to give you an example of this later on, but right now, try to follow. I'm sure you can. So the child innately goes about making sense of seemingly random things when it's born, and subconsciously arranging them in patterns for a more sophisticated understanding and ultimately a more sophisticated psychological fortress to keep you safe. This is what you do before you're 7 or 8 years old. Now, all this sounds good, doesn't it? Except, and here are my excepts. Number one, this is an egoic experience. It's all about the child. You see? It has to be all about the child now. So all these unpleasant, unhappy things that you experience in life are based on an understanding that it's all about you. And usually a very quick assumption is it's also all your fault, no matter what it is. Inappropriately so, by the way, in many cases. Number two, everything that the child surmises is based on appearances, because the developed mind has not formed and doesn't even start forming until you're in your 20s. You see? Number three, these ego child's mind suppositions are all determined from fear and the need to survive. So if you carry this as an adult, you're still surviving instead of exploring and living your energetic and creative potential. Number four, it's a narrow concept of yourself, focused on what's wrong with you and what you lack, instead of something much bigger. Now, where's this something much bigger? In a larger context, when you see your life as a whole, and you know your unique purpose, and you know not a moment is wasted, and you begin to know the joy of abundance and change and growth and opportunity. Those things, for you to know, are in the larger perspective of yourself and your world and your God. You bet the mind has to change. And number 5, if you continue to create and work from the ego child's mind, you retain your fear and actually self-perpetuate in many ways. We're going to show you an example of that later on in this show. I want you, I'm so sorry about that dog barking. I promise next week I'm going to make sure he's not on the porch because I think we hear him too well. You may not be hearing him well, but I am. So I want you to see in what I've just said so far that the feeling, the energetic something's wrong here, is already there, engendered by the chemical reaction of the mother because of her emotion in utero. Now, we've got a call. I'd like to go there, and then we'll continue what we're going to talk about. Hello. I'm talking to a 610 exchange. This is Martha. You're on the air. Who am I speaking with?
Hi.
Hi.
Linda.
Linda. Well, hello, Linda. How are you?
I'm fine.
Where is 6110? May I just ask what part of the country you're in?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay, that helps me locate you. Energy. Okay, energy-wise, tell me about you and what can I help you with today?
Is this a psychic reading?
You know, it's certainly a part of me, and I don't mind tuning into you at all. But what I do is teach consciousness and enlightenment, so it's always going to have that spin on it. You want to pass something by me and see where we go with it? All right. What's going on?
Okay. I'm 27 years old. I'm on SSI for some diagnosis of mental illness, and like namely one of them is autism or autistic spectrum. And well, the thing is, like, every time I want to apply for a job or even think of applying or in the process of looking at jobs online, and then while applying and afterwards for like a week or something, like I get paralysis for some reason. Like it hurts. I just feel my face is stiff, my chest is stiff, my limbs are stiff.
Mm-hmm. I understand that completely.
Whether I can.
So go on.
I was wondering whether is there a way to like clear it, or why am I being like this?
Yes, Linda, there certainly is, darling. Those are learned behaviors from a child that doesn't feel safe. And so you were very brilliant to create some of your defenses, like being on the autism spectrum, that keeps you from, feeling and being in there as a participant. And also the paralysis that you're talking about. So I happen to have a different spin on this in terms of consciousness. I think what you did was quite brilliant, but I don't think you have to live with this. It just means that you have to learn some different things, and it is a mind change here. The paralysis that you're talking about only exists in the ego child's mind. It actually doesn't exist when we're talking about the highest self and the love-centered self and the higher mind. It doesn't exist there at all. But this is a childhood that is worried about doing something wrong. And perhaps your mother or your father, I get it was your mom, was worried about doing something wrong, and her fear certainly engendered your fear, and not only did it instill that in you, but she's supposed to know. She's the mom, right? She's supposed to have an idea. And if our parents are afraid, oftentimes we grow up terribly afraid, but we don't know what we're afraid of because it's not our fear at all. We find evidence in our lives that we're afraid. Here's what I recommend. There are some, and I'm awfully sorry about the dog barking. I just cannot understand why he thinks that's great.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention to the dog.
Thank you, darling. I appreciate that very much. I hope that others are. I feel like that everything has a purpose, Linda. Really, I do. I think everything has a purpose. We just have to find out what it is. So the dog barking, I'm hoping bothers me more than it bothers you, because I'd like to have you all have a very pleasant time. But the dog barking is reality, and we must transcend it. So thank you for paying more attention to my words. Darling, what I'm here to tell you is indeed some or all of this, I think, honestly, could be handled with a study in consciousness. Now, I'm not talking about working with me, although you're welcome to get on our website and see what's going on there. But there are many, many fine people out there that can help you. I particularly recommend some sort of energetic or spiritual psychology that actually can work beyond one mind and actually into another. Now, being on the autistic spectrum, in my opinion, and it is only my opinion, is a wonderful way to keep yourself safe. And once we realize that, and we realize that it is just a device from the child's mind, as is, by the way, not being dithering and not being able to make a decision, i.e. then freezing up, are ways that the child protected itself. That you're calling a show like this, I don't think you called for a psychic reading, because what you are saying to me is not in that realm. It's in the realm of healing and going from one mind to the other. So I think you full well, in some other than conscious way, knew what to ask for. I'm not trying to in any way challenge conventional wisdom. I'm just saying that I and many other people work with energy. And if you change the energy, you change the behaviors. I think that it's really important for you to find somebody and to go back there and to see how it really was beyond what you think you know about your past. Because your past fits into a larger whole. You're much more, you are not just your anxiety. You see what I'm saying? If I ask you, are you just your anxiety? And if I ask most people that, they'd say no. You'd say no. Because you know there's more there. That's the reason you're even calling a show like this. But it's one thing to realize that, and another thing to live past your anxiety, to live like you are more. Now, what you're doing when you go in and you feel this paralysis is you're focusing on not being enough. You're focusing on not feeling safe. You're actually on somebody else's side other than yours. You're actually looking at yourself from the outside and not having a knowledge that I really am quite a wonderful person, and you are. You are dear and sweet. You mean well every time. You have a lot of love in you, Linda. And you know those things about you, and that's why you called a show like this, to get confirmation. But you're investing in not being enough. You're investing in the child's mind fears that, you're going to be wrong, you're going to do something terrible, you're not going to be accepted and loved. And when you were a kid and felt those things, you might not have survived if you didn't defend yourself in the way you've chosen. But this is a different world now. You are capable of much more. And you are calling this show because these things are still yet to be developed in you. Are they developable? Absolutely. And you'll do it. But you need to go in that way of self-discovery and consciousness. And not, sweetie, identify with the autistic spectrum and your anxiety as you. This is something you have and that you have subconsciously chosen. And you know what? it's soothing in a way. You did it the right way because it protected you beautifully. But suppose you find out that reality is actually pretty safe and that people aren't judging you, and that the one thing in the world that this world lacks is the authentic, real person known as you, with your specific talents, gifts, and abilities. Suppose you find that out. That would create a different life for you, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it would. Okay, so you got to go find those things out. The search.
So to conclude what you said, did you say Oh, okay. Keep on going.
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Just affirming what you said. You said to study like consciousness and spiritual psychology, and did you say self-identifying?
No. Well, you're going to have revealed to you in your search your authentic self. You know, right now you're confused, sweetheart, because you don't know the ego child's mind from your highest self. They're both operating and you don't know which one you're working from. And that needs to be worked with. You need to start knowing yourself more on these psychological and energetic levels of you. So if I were you, certainly the only person I know about right now is us. Look on my website. It's Martha Burgess Novak, BurgessNovak.net. We're .net.com. You'll see how to contact me, and you'll also see how to contact some wonderful people that I've trained. And you'll be called to one of them, and if you're confused about who to work with, call me or write me. I'll call and give me a phone number. I'll call you back, and we will talk about who would be in your best interest to work with. Okay? But there are other people too. Good morning, Susan. Susan's just written, and I'm so glad that you did, darling. Thank you. Thank you very much, Susan. Linda, sometimes people write me on Facebook Live where they can see me in person, and I was just reading Susan's text, who was very dear. So what I recommend for you is get on our website, but you can also look up energetic psychology, or anyone who teaches any kind of spiritual psychology, energetic psychology. That would be very important for you. But the study of consciousness, which will contain that, if this is a truly reputable program, I think can help you immensely, my dear. And because what you're describing as a performance anxiety. I was in the theater, Linda. If this is the first time you've called in, my training was theater and film. I grew up in the theater. And when we are afraid, and when we are in our ego child's mind, we're separate from us. We're not just working from who we are. We're over there judging who we are, you see? We learn to do that, and we have to unlearn to do that. That's the nice thing. You were programmed when you were a kid, and anything that we're generally programmed for as a kid, we can generally unprogram and program something else as an adult. But you have to start working with the energy. The energy has to change, and that's why I'm recommending some energy work on you. If the energy changes, the behavior changes, and you'll be less afraid. I have been interested for years. When I taught acting, I had an acting school for a while. And when I had somebody filled with performance anxiety, which you have, what I would do was that I'd stand them in front of me, and I would say, I had this little ball that had nubs all over it. And when I threw it on the floor, it would bounce in all sorts of directions, right? And I would say to the person, I want you to give your speech, give your monologue, give whatever they were doing. And I want you, though, to play ball with me the whole time. I want you to catch the ball. I want you to throw it back to me. You have to throw it back to me very straight, underhanded, so I can catch it. But I'm going to throw it to you and bounce it all over the room. You have to run for it. You have to continue to talk to me and give me your speech or your monologue or whatever they were doing, right? And the most amazing thing happened after a few little trial runs. All of a sudden, they don't have any problem anymore. They're in their body. They're in their body. They're no longer outside judging because they can't catch the ball going all sorts of different directions and talk to me. So I've seen this work for a fact. Then the next step to something like that is do it enough so that you can stay in your body. Stay here. Just for this speech. You can leave after that. But stay here. Just for this speech. And I'll point out when you leave and separate from yourself. Because what you're not doing is staying in Linda. And the only thing that this world doesn't have is a Linda. And it needs it. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's what I do recommend. Look on our website. If nothing appeals to you on our website, certainly look other places. Find a consciousness coach. Learn more about you and who you really are. Because who you think you are right now is not the authentic self. It's a version, little child's version of how you see yourself. But you're so much more than that, darling. That's the reason we're talking. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
You have any other questions?
That will be all.
Okay. I wish, Linda, that I could just wave a magic wand over you and say, there you are. Shabam. But the thing that you're dealing with right now came from your childhood. It came from possibly a lineage. It came from how you surmised yourself, life itself, your God. This, somebody told you or felt this was a really scary world. They gave that to you. Now you believe. But all of these things are just a small part of you. They're part of the child's mind, not the larger self that has the child's mind as a little part of it. If I were going to draw a picture, I'd draw a great big circle, but as we know, because you are unlimited potential, it doesn't really have the defined boundaries. But just for our purposes, let's say that's your highest self. That's the part of you you called in. That's your potential, right? That's the part of you that called in to hear about. All right, cool. Now put a tiny dot in that. That's the ego child's mind. And that, my dear, is running the show. That's driving the bus. And I want you to know about all that explored potential, unexplored potential that's there waiting to be explored for you. And then your problem will be fixed. You get it?
Okay.
So, the best way I know to do it is go from the child's mind to the higher self mind, and a lot of things are fixed. Why? Because I've seen them fixed. Okay?
Okay.
All right, dear. Take care of yourself, and I certainly hope that you'll find help all around, as a matter of fact. All right? And if we can help, just let me know. Okay? Thank you so much for calling in, dear heart.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right. That was a very nice phone call. Our phone number is 347-850-1647. We all have our ways of doing things. And Linda, I do urge you to listen to the rest of the show because there'll be some tips in it for you too. But I'm not interested in easy fixes, although easy fixes are nice because the problem isn't solved. I'll give you an easy fix. Here's an easy fix, and it's one that I often use to make my point right away. So I was called into, I do a lot of corporate coaching, and A man called me in who was the head of a department. He wanted me to work with one of his employees. The employee was very good, very dear, very sweet, always got his work done, was quite good at what he did. But when he was on a conference call with all the boards sitting around, and on the other end of the call were really important people in this Fortune 1000 company, he'd fall apart. He would get tongue-tied. He couldn't articulate. And so I talked to him, and I realized what he was doing. Definitely the ego child's mind behavior, of course, but what he was doing was always seeing everyone as his very prosperous, very talented, and larger-than-life father, who was very critical of his son. So he would just fall apart. Okay? Now, I can tell him that, and that's not going to help somebody that hasn't been on this journey. That doesn't, that's always very interesting. Well, that's very interesting. Thank you very much. But I had just a few hours with him. So I said, who do you admire more than anybody in the world? Who is just a strong personality for you? Who is, just somebody you would like to be? And he named a golfer. I don't know anything about golf at all. But I don't care who it is as long as he knows, all right? And I said, okay, I want you to go out of the room, and I want you to put on this guy and be him. Can you think you could imitate him? And he said, yeah, I think I can imitate him. I watch a lot of golf. I watch, he's my hero. I said, great, I want you to imitate him. And what I want you to do is go out of the room, and then I want you to walk in like him, and I want you to do the first 3 lines of your speech as him, not as you. So he went out, and he came in, and he was brilliant. Now, the reason I gave him 3 lines, I said only 3 lines, and stopped him, was I wanted him to succeed, not fail, and he was going to catch on eventually to what I was doing. I wanted to stop him before that. And I said, dear, do you realize that golfer is not in the room? That was you. The only one performing was you. He was shocked, you see. He was able to do it from that point on. Now, would that fix him permanently? No. If somebody's intimidating enough, he's going to fall apart again. But he could do that in his boardroom if he was just this. And he had to acknowledge that golfer has nothing to do with him. It's him doing that. So that was a sneaky way we got to his highest self. You understand? Good. So that will help you, but I'm interested in fixing it. That's just me. All right. Now, let's go back to see some of this that we're talking about. Talk about changing our minds, all right? So, you grow up with these experiences that you've had in utero. And to explain the chemically induced in utero experience, you as a baby search for clues. Now, you're born now, right? And I'm going to give you an example so you can understand this a little more. So before you were born, let's say the young father is worried about the financial implications of having a child at this point in his budding career. I'm just making this up, right? Let's say he expresses this to the mother, who feels very conflicted by what he's saying because she knows she wants to have a child, but she fears that it may be the wrong time too. After all, the husband, I'm saying this for a reason, the husband handles the finances and knows more about them than she does, and he may be right. So the child is receiving a lot of chemicals here. And forgive me while I, in my way, guess at what the child is actually receiving and trying to translate into words. How about something like this? The child determines that there is only conditional love, and that one is going to have to be perfect to be worthy of the parent's love because he's not wanted. Then perhaps the child feels, I'm a burden. I'm coming in and causing terrific stress that my family wouldn't have if it wasn't for me. I'm at fault. Suppose there is a loss of self-esteem here because you're always at fault. All right. Let's say the child is a girl. If so, she is already not expected to know as much as a man, and certainly not handle the finances. And if she is a boy, he's going to have to carry the burden of financial responsibility of the family when he is of age, and it's going to be a lot of pressure. You understand? The chemicals come, and then the child, when it lives outside, puts emotional attachments to these things, finds the answers in their very being for these confusing chemicals that they marked when they were in utero. These issues are chemically induced, and because they are present chemically, they're present energetically, and because they are present chemically and energetically, the groundwork is now there for the child to gather evidence to prove it's already in utero energetic psychology. You see? All this and much, much more is in the subconscious mind. It's not in the conscious one. So if we're just dressing the conscious mind and reading books about change and growth and yet never confronting these things, it's only a little bit effective. Now, you want to know some good news? Here's the good news. What I told Linda is the good news. It's all in there as old programming, and because it's a program, an energetic program, it can be changed. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a developmental biologist, says that these subconscious programs play out in our lives 95% of the time. I believe that's true if you don't address them. If you address them, they don't have to play out at all, except in positive ways, because we got some positive things too. The problem is, and you're going to hear me talk about this later on, to keep what we're doing in our psychology, in our structure that we create egoically, we make bad things good for us and we make good things bad for us. I'm going to give you an example later on. Okay. The insidious things about our issues and patterns, and perhaps the greatest thing about them too, is that after all, a big part of our journey to consciousness is confronting old issues and patterns that no longer serve us, old identities that we realize are not us at all, but a small part of us. And that these things are subconscious. The insidious thing is that you are not aware of them. Hi, Kat. Okay. Kat is asking a question here, which is, what if there is disappointment in your gender? Very interesting. In your gender as a girl, after having two other girls and feeling they really wanted a male. Well, I think that's really important to address. Thank you so much for writing in, Kat. I think that you have not realized that that's their problem, not your problem. You were just born a wonderful human being. Their problem is they're seeing human beings as male and female instead of a wonderful human being that can add value to the world and huge contribution. And so our minds got to separate from what, good morning, darling, from what we think about it now in our true self and authenticity and allow them to think whatever they wanted. They can think whatever they want. Everybody can think whatever they want. People can like me or not want me. Like me. They're certainly entitled to that opinion. I'm always going to support that we're entitled to do anything that we believe we have to do. But it can be changed. And I think that your question leads us to say, I got to separate from what my parents think and think as my own authentic person, which only happens in the highest self. You understand? Okay. Moving on now. So the insidious thing is that we're not aware of our issues and patterns in many cases. Now, we are aware of some of them, but you aren't aware of all of them, and there are several really good reasons why. Number one, they formed before language. Where's your language for it? Number two, a lot of people are in denial about the fact that they're there. I can't even begin to tell you how many people have smiled at me from across the room and told me quite boldly that they have no issues. And, you know, there's just absolutely, oh, good morning, Angela. There's just nothing for me to do but smile. If they want to be a client and find out, oh, yeah, we all have more issues than the New York Times that we have to get through. Otherwise, it would be no personal growth, right? So we're in denial, but we're in denial for, we have a lot of ways to deny. How about being too busy? How about saying, I'm too busy for that? I'm too busy for introspection. Let me tell you, there's a great relief when you introspect, because I'm going to tell you, and I know in our sessions are 2 hours long. I want them that long because I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear what Spirit has to say, and I want to do my work. That's how I'm satisfied. And I need 2 full hours to do it, and sometimes then it doesn't seem like enough. Of course it is. So, nobody's too busy. And it's a great relief when you've got 2 hours a week that are literally devoted to you. And you'll find then that you devote more hours to that because you're aware all of a sudden of what you're doing, and you watch it playing out and you go, my gosh, I didn't know that. I didn't know I was doing that. I always wondered why I was depressed or felt stuck or unhappy. Well, there's a reason for all of it, dear hearts. There's a reason for everything you're doing. So take heart that there's a reason for it. But let's not keep doing it. Let's find out the reason. Let's resolve it. Let's go on and do something else. That's how to change your mind. And number 3, we aren't aware because we don't want to change. Because the propaganda from the egoic child's mind tells us that this is the only way you are alive, and it's true in a way. The child did need to make sense of its world because the world didn't make sense to him. And if it doesn't make sense to a child, the child's survival is threatened. When children can't figure it out, their survival's threatened. So issues actually are the mark of a very, very intelligent, smart, creative mind. Good for you for having them, but you don't have to keep them. You see? Again, the egoic child's mind structure of you, who you are, the world, God, your parents, your siblings, dogs, cats, and the world at large, is based on appearances. And now, at this point in your life, we have to turn our energies from doing the same things we did as a kid for survival to knowing more, to being more conscious today than we were yesterday of our blocks and how to get beyond them, how to work through problems, for example, because every problem has a way to work through it. By the way, what you may get out of that is not what the ego child's mind may want. Amazing. So you have to have a bigger mind, the highest mind, to see that what you get out of this might contain some pretty big gifts. But the ego child's mind tells us we're not comfortable. And if we're not comfortable, God's not there. And that's not true. God's always there. But it's either acknowledged and therefore used, or unacknowledged and unused. Or used in a way that is not in keeping with your highest self, but is being used in a way that in some way soothes or satisfies the ego child's mind, like rage. If the ego child's mind, that part of you, has a lot of anger, it's going to be pretty damn good, going to feel pretty good to use it. You're not going to want something else, because you want to keep expressing what you couldn't express back in your past. We can't stay anywhere. We have to move beyond all of these things, but you have to move beyond them by actually embracing them and discovering them and seeing more. And then they drop into the context of a larger whole. One day, when consciousness starts really opening, you wake up and you go, oh my God, my life has been the perfect whole. Not one moment, no matter what I've said or felt or thought or done, not one thing was wasted. Now, we all have the choice of finding out more or not. Many people decide not to find out more. They live their lives stuck, their whole lives. They call themselves happy. Some people go on a search. The one thing that both groups have in common, though, is the ego child's mind. In the first group, they don't look any deeper. In the second group, they do. I urge you to be in the second group, because the propaganda from the ego child's mind is a lie. And you know the biggest lie of all that the ego child's mind tells you? It tells you this is all there is, and you are what you most fear. That's a blatant lie. You know, there are lots of schools of psychology that call it a myth. And you've heard me use that word from time to time, but I'm going to tell you, no, it's a lie. Myth is just a nice word for the lies we tell ourselves. And we've got to get beyond them. There's a heck of a lot more out there. And it's the most exciting journey you'll ever go on, that anybody could go on. You know, I want you to realize something. Let's do an image for a minute. Let's say you want to go to Paris. Choose anything. Somewhere you really want to go. That's great. Now, let's drop you out in the wilderness somewhere and say, find your way. What are you going to do? Well, I want you to realize in this image that you got to know where you are before you can go anywhere. You got to find out where you are before you can go anywhere. You've even got to find out who you are. Can you survive that and get to Paris? Going to prove who you are, right? Or not. I think that's a pretty good image. You can't go anywhere until you find out where you are and what you're capable of. And that's what consciousness studies do. They're going to move you past and challenge you to new truths so that you can replace the ones based on appearances that you've been telling yourself in the ego child's mind are true. Then you can make bolder and bolder decisions And indeed, you're going to see Paris. But how do you find your issues if they're subconscious? Well, I'm going to tell you a really good way. Right now, look around at your life, because your life reflects your subconscious mind's beliefs. Yeah. And don't forget to check if you're happy. So why don't we talk about some tips for you? How do you change your mind and change your life right away? Well, the right away is deceptive, because there's no time like now. But there's another now right behind that, and another now, and another now. And that's the glory of this. How great can you be? Where does your potential end? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it doesn't. This isn't the same thing. I grew up in a family where I had a very narcissistic, extremely talented uncle. Okay? And the worst thing he could say to anybody is they need to see a psychiatrist. So we all lived in dreaded fear of him making a pronouncement. You need to see a psychiatrist. And you know what? I've talked to a lot of people who grew up in some sort of environment like that, where you thought of therapy as seeing the psychiatrist, somebody that just keeps you together. Well, I'm going to tell you, there's a reason that great actors see therapists. There's a reason that you have got to figure out yourself as a conscious person. Now, I'm not saying that all actors are conscious. I'm saying that great ones know themselves better than most people. So, here are some tips. Big tip. Do not judge your process. Do not compare yourself to anybody else. Do not put any OCD limitations on yourself. I'll be conscious in a year. This is ridiculous, and it's just not the way grace works. We are talking about grace here, and the grace-filled life. Accept that the conscious mind, whatever your age, is entrenched. I think this is an important acceptance. That means it works by rote. You're faced with a new situation, for example. You play an old tape that was recorded before you were 8 years old to deal with this new situation. But life is a divine improvisation at its best. It requires new ways of thinking, new ways of being creative, and it requires you to add value to this glorious global mixture. And how you do that is through divine inspiration, not rote thinking, being in your highest mind and channeling that through. It's one of the benefits of consciousness, right? Number 2. Certainly I'm doing this and love the work that I do in teaching consciousness. I love working with my clients. But I'm going to tell you right now, you need to find somebody to work with, either us or someone else. And again, my website is Martha Burgess Novak, Novak.net. Look at that. See the people I've trained. See if one of them is for you. Write them all. See what they have to tell you. Call me. Find out who you should work with once I know a little bit about you. Find one that's well-versed in psychology. Allow yourself to be challenged. This is not about making you feel good. We all are narcissistic in our ways. We all don't want to see the dark side. Okay, not that there's a real dark side, but we're human and we have one. And consciousness is about acceptance. It's about putting our arms around everything we are, everything we've done, everything we've been, everything. So we can start fresh and new in this moment. The opportunity is actually in the problem. Wow, really? And you've been avoiding the problem. The opportunity is actually in the problem, my dears. But to open the opportunity, we must see the situation differently. Just as a wonderful photographer experiments with angles and perspectives, so must you, if you're to see and experience more. And when we're working from the ego child's mind, we only see one perspective from our structure. It's always in lack. It's always fear-based. Okay. Number 3. Allow your perspectives and your version of reality to be upset. You're turning over an apple cart that needs to be turned over. I say, good for you. It should be overturned. It should be questioned and analyzed and looked at and challenged. Try to remember that all the distress you suffer and all the emotions you feel are responses to the stress of your past. Let's learn new ways to handle all that. That's the working through. One must learn. You must learn how to work through from your highest self. Then there's nothing to be afraid of. Then you'll feel safe. I remember another client of mine. I've told this story before, but I think it's a good story. She was in a company that was only a men's field when she got into it. Very few women were in it. A man's field. So she was doing really well, had a great reputation, delivered on time. And a great big client came to her. And about that time, the company was looking at her and looking at another organization, and so she wanted the client. So she said, well, let me partner with these other people, and we'll come up with something wonderful for you. Well, she was very busy. Again, she had a marvelous business of her own, pardon me for burping, and she left too much in their hands, and they ruined it. They messed it up. It was a gigantic failure. She didn't watch them. So she came to me at the bottom of her life, and she said, my reputation is ruined. I'll never get over this. It's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to find something else to do. And I said, not so fast. Why don't we do something else? And she said, what? And I said, well, let's sincerely, that's the important word, because if you're doing this for lesser reasons, and it's going to backfire. And we had to get her there to the higher self, right? Because she wasn't there to begin with when she heard this. I said, why don't we sincerely send a gift basket and a note? She said to me, send a gift basket? What am I going to get out of that? Woo! Does that show you the kind of self we're in? Yes. So we talked. And we wrote a note. And when this note unfolded, when I was dictating this, she said, I get it. I see what I'm doing. And the note went something like, Dear George, I don't remember what the guy's name was. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity of working with you. I totally messed this up, did not watch and oversee what I should have. And I learned a tremendous lesson from you. By the way, this guy was bad-mouthing her behind her back. That was one of the things that hurt her so much. I want you to know how much I appreciate the lesson. And I'm going to take this very profound lesson I've learned, and I'm going to apply it to every company I ever work with. And I will never, because of this experience, make this mistake again. Enjoy the gift basket. No, I sincerely send my best wishes to you and hope that the future holds wonderful things. Well, within the hour of getting that gift basket, he hired her back. Only her. Now, there are incredible things to do. There are many options in the highest self. There's only one, losing your business and your reputation, in the ego child's mind. You've got to be taught to think these higher thoughts, because I catch clients all the time thinking they're thinking a higher thought and they're doing the same thing they've always done, just disguised a little bit. I'll give you an example of that in a moment. Number 4 tips: don't use confusion as an excuse. A lot of times people will say, I'm so confused. I don't know what to do. I don't understand. When we want to stop our progress, avoidance often masquerades as confusion. You need somebody challenging you on that. Listen, avoidance often masquerades as confusion. In this work on yourself, you're going to see that you use avoidance a lot in a lot of different ways, and this is one of them. And I'm always so proud of clients when they come in and I'll challenge them on something and they'll sit there and they'll say, I can't think of anything. That is not an excuse. That's great. Number 5. Psychology tells you that in your development, to keep doing what you're doing as the egoic child's mind, this is what I said before, and it's important to say again and explain. You have made good things bad for you, and what isn't in your best interest, good. Now, as an adult, if we've done this a lot in our kidhood, we actually don't know the difference between what's good for us and what's not. And we fool ourselves by doing the same thing over and over and over again. We've got to challenge that. We've got to see it another way. We've got to change our minds, right? But awareness comes before changing your mind. We don't want to see it another way, though, because we're getting something out of our negative thinking and feeling. We're getting something out of it. This is how we make bad things good in our personal psychology. Oftentimes, it's because by doing what we're doing as a child, what we do in reaction to it soothes us. We have found ways to comfort ourselves in these times, and because we don't comfort ourselves in any adult, mature way and life-enhancing way, we have to keep doing what we're doing. For example, I'm going to give you an example here, and I think this is a good one. Let's say you work really hard and you work long hours. But we're going to say you aren't really doing it out of a sincere sense of contribution or accomplishment or enjoyment. No. Let's say you're doing it because you need the money, you think you can't get it any other way, and because you psychologically need the approval of your boss because you give yourself absolutely no approval in your life. So you need it from other people. So you work way too hard to get it. Approval is love to you. And you have a life pretty devoid of approval or love. So you stay at work and slave away, wanting to get the approval, i.e. the love, from your boss. So when you do get home at night and when you experience your weekends, you're often working. After all, they have permission to call you day and night. And when you're not working, and here's where the soothing comes in, you stay at home watching movies, drinking, smoking, eating for comfort. You tell yourself that you are so exhausted you can't possibly go out and make connections with people that really care about you and love you, but you don't believe in being cared about and loved anyway. You don't think you can be. Self-esteem, low self-esteem, is completely entrenched. Well, whatever you're doing, and whatever elements of the story we can add to this, the problem is you can't have a happy life doing what you do over and over and over again. This is an excuse. I work too hard to change this pattern. You've got to have a change of mind before a change of life. Then you can choose to live differently. And when you do choose this, the world and its opportunities open up. You can't see them when you don't have any options. You don't have any options. That's what you believe. The steps you'll take to invent your new life all of a sudden are really revealed here. And you see them very clearly because a new you is seeing them because you address the old beliefs that kept you, the old you. It indeed all starts with you. I am telling you, you change your mind, you change your life. But it doesn't happen like that. And anybody who tells you it does is just blowing smoke up the old pant leg. You have to know yourself. You have to know where you are before you can see where you go and what the steps are to get there. Thank you so much for listening to the show today. We are just about out of time. And I've enjoyed talking to you very much. We will be here next week with another show at 10 o'clock on Sundays. Be sure and listen, please, to our archive shows that are on blogtalkradio.com and on Facebook Live. They're on all sorts of subjects, and I hope they'll be helpful to you. You know, it's very hard. I was talking to my husband this morning that it's very hard talking about these big subjects in a short period of time. I'd like to try, and I may try one of these days, but I want you to understand how these things certainly evolve. You understand? You can do us a big favor. I see some thumbs up. Thank you so much. You can do us a big favor by getting the word around about the show, by sending it to social media. If you get on Blog Talk Radio, I think you can send the shows around. And please, you know, use your mailing list this way. I'd be very grateful. This is how we get new audiences, by people sharing that they've gotten something out of shows like this. Please visit our website. There are other offerings on that website. And one of the things we are very, very proud of is our IT person, Jim Sattlers, just created a marvelous app based on my second book, The Teacup Prophecies. That's what it's called. On thank you, darling. I appreciate it. Thank you, Kat. Based on the Teacup Prophecies is based on my second book. So there is a great little app out there for iPhones. Now it's only for iPhones, and it's available in the App Store for 99 cents. That's a lot cheaper than the book that you can buy on the site too. My first book is there on consciousness and spiritual surrender and manifestation and how to create the life you want. That book is called The Life You Want. Amazing. Darlings, thank you for listening. It means the world to me. And thank you for sharing and following and all the things that are available on our social media now. New ways to connect all the time. Thank you for listening, and we'll be here next week. Let's do a quick prayer and close this out, shall we? Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, all everything is in this world, we thank you so much for this information. We open ourselves now to surrender any of our old issues and blocks and needs for them that occur to us today. Anything that we will let go of will be transformed by you into the now and into more awareness and into the love that we really are. We thank you so much, dear God, for our beautiful listeners, for the information that comes through us all. I want to thank you, Linda, for calling. We open ourselves as we learn from all, and we say now, dear God, you are everything, and we now let you have our issues, blocks, our needs to hold on to them, vestiges and related issues, identities over identities, sympathies over sympathies, definitions of self and roles we played that no longer serve us. Instead, we open our awareness, our consciousness, and indeed our enlightenment, that we may be the channels for love that the ascended God we are brings forth. We thank you so much for all of this, dear God. We say this prayer now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening today. Thank you for it all. There are no mistakes. We appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing each and every one of you next week. Same time, same channel. Bye.